There are places in the United Kingdom where you can buy a house for less than a London parking space, entire islands where median home prices sit under £100,000. Coastal towns where unincorporated land is cheaper than a used SUV sitting on a forecourt in Croydon. Sounds like a scam, right? That is exactly what I thought, because here is the thing. When something is cheap in Britain, there is always a reason. Weather, isolation, dead industries, planning, law, written by people who have never tried to live off-grid in their lives. So today we are auditing 7 off-grid friendly communities where you can actually start fresh. We are breaking down the real numbers, the cost of living arbitrage, and the brutal catch hiding behind every postcard. And stay until the end, because the last place on this list is so affordable you will immediately start Googling how bad are Scottish winters really. Location 1. Isle of Lewis, Outer Hebrides. Let's start with the Isle of Lewis. Homes here range from £90,000 to £170,000. Land plots as low as £20,000. That is not a typo. But here is what nobody tells you. This is crofting country. Depopulation has been suppressing these prices for decades. You are 30 miles west of mainland Scotland, entirely dependent on ferries and flights, and the Atlantic does not care about your moving timeline. Translation: it is stunning, it is quiet, it is a financial oasis, and it will absolutely end you if you are the kind of person who needs next day delivery to feel human. Cost of living runs slightly higher due to import logistics, but your housing cost is so dramatically below the UK average that you're still winning the arbitrage game by a significant margin. Real talk, this is not remote cottagecore for your Instagram feed. This is weather tested, peat smoke survival. Picture yourself in Lewis, stone walls shaking in the wind, no traffic. No sirens, just horizon, and a mortgage that costs less than what you used to pay in rent for a box room in Manchester. Location 2. Campbelltown, Argyll. Campbelltown. Coastal homes between £100,000 and £160,000. Once a thriving fishing and whiskey hub, now a ghost of what it used to be, and that is precisely why you should be paying attention. Here is the thing: when industry contracts and population declines, property values stall. That is not tragedy. That is cost of living arbitrage in its purest form. Coastal Scotland at half the price of southern England. But here is what nobody tells you. You are at the end of a 3-hour peninsular drive to get anywhere with a hospital or a decent supermarket. Job diversity is thin. Social life is seasonal and small. Translation: you are not paying for convenience because there is none. You are paying for sea air and financial breathing room. And for some people that trade is worth every single kilometre of that peninsular road. Location 3. Alston, Cumbria. Alston, Cumbria, England's highest market town. Median home prices between £120,000 and £190,000. 200-year-old stone properties, shops, pubs, small services. It operationally functions like a town. Real talk. Is boring enough to make your bank account genuinely happy. Youth out migration has been keeping prices reasonable for years, and that trend is not reversing anytime soon. The catch? This is the coldest town in England. Public transport is limited. The economy moves at a pace that will either heal you or hollow you out, depending on your personality type. Picture yourself in Alston. Frost on the hills, no traffic noise, a 2-century-old cottage that costs less than a studio flat in Leeds. Your biggest monthly expense is heating oil, not debt. Amazon Prime sometimes takes patience. That is the whole trade. Translation: you are not broke anymore. You are just a little cold and slightly bored, and for millions of people drowning in rent, that sounds like an extraordinary upgrade. Location 4. West Wales, Pembrokeshire and Ceredigion. Now we move into territory that is genuinely rare in the United Kingdom. West Wales. Land plots of 1 to 5 acres starting from £40,000. Cottages from £160,000 to £230,000. But here is what nobody tells you. Wales has something called One Planet Development Policy. It is one of the only legitimate legal frameworks in the UK that actually supports off-grid building, provided you meet strict sustainability criteria. We are talking septic systems, renewable energy generation, food production targets, the whole architecture of a functioning off-grid life, legally. Here is the thing, the planning compliance is heavy. Rural broadband gaps are real, and in some areas you are moving into Welsh-speaking communities with their own cultural fabric, and that deserves your respect and your preparation. Translation. Off-grid living in the UK is possible, but you will earn it in planning documents, building codes and bureaucratic patience before you earn it in freedom. Picture yourself in Pembrokeshire, a timber home powered by solar, rainwater collection feeding your kitchen, chickens in a field you actually own. Your housing cost is half your old rent. That is not a fantasy, that is one planet development. Location 5, Isle of Bute. Flats from £60,000. Homes between 120,000 and 200,000. A Victorian seaside town that tourism partially forgot, with ageing housing stock and lower demand than its geography deserves. Real talk, the ferry commute to Glasgow keeps it accessible, but psychologically it creates distance that suppresses demand, and that suppressed demand is your financial opportunity. The catch is straightforward. Seasonal economy. Some properties need serious renovation and a realistic budget for it. You must factor ferry time and ferry cost into your actual cost of living calculation, not as an afterthought, but as a line item. Translation. You can buy a grand Victorian flat for less than a London deposit, restore it slowly, and watch ferries cross the Firth of Clyde, while your mortgage barely registers on your monthly outgoings. That is a retirement cheat code disguised as an island. Location 6, Scottish Highlands, Sutherland and Caithness. Scottish Highlands, Sutherland, Caithness. Land plots from £20,000 to £70,000. Homes from £130,000. Decades of outmigration have carved out space, silence, and serious affordability. But here is what nobody tells you. Housing is cheap and heating is expensive. The cost of living arbitrage you gain on the mortgage, you partially surrender on fuel. Travel is not optional here, it is structural. Isolation is not an aesthetic, it is a genuine operational reality you need to audit before you sign anything. Picture yourself in Sutherland, a detached house with no visible neighbours. A night sky that makes you question why you ever lived under light pollution. Your debt load is minimal. Your heating bill is noticeable. That is the honest equation. Translation. You are buying silence and space in exchange for convenience. If you have genuinely priced that trade and still want it, this is the gold standard of affordability in mainland Britain. Location 7. Isle of EIG. The Isle of Age. Properties range from £150,000 to £220,000 when they are even available, which is rarely. The island bought itself in the 1990s. It now runs on a fully community-owned renewable electricity grid. 100 residents, ferry access only. Here is the thing, this is not a YouTube off-grid aesthetic. This is a functioning, community-governed, energy-independent island. The catch is that the approval process for new residents can be selective, because when you only have 100 people maintaining a shared infrastructure, cognitive dissonance between a newcomer's expectations and the community's ethos is not a minor inconvenience. It is an existential problem for the whole system. Translation. You attend community meetings about wind turbine maintenance. You know everyone's name. Your electricity comes from the hill behind your house. This is what off-grid actually looks like when it grows up. The era of affordable living is not dead. It just relocated to places you have never seriously considered. Here is the pattern. Cheap housing exists where population declined. Off-grid potential exists where land is rural and councils are pragmatic. Financial arbitrage exists where demand is lower than beauty would honestly suggest, but cheap always comes with a cost. Weather, isolation, career. Limitations. Stop paying for a lifestyle you cannot afford in a city that does not need you, but do not replace that with a fantasy you have not stress tested. Here is your smart auditor checklist. Visit in winter, not summer. Price your heating and transport costs before you price the property. Read the building codes and planning rules before you buy any land. Do not let your bank account scream while you chase a postcode that looks good on the screen. Real talk. Freedom is not always flashy. Sometimes it is just a stone cottage in the wind, a mortgage you can breathe through, and a night sky that has never once apologized for being exactly what it is. If you want more investigations into where the real financial leverage is in property and relocation, subscribe, because the arbitrage is out there. You just have to be willing to look somewhere inconvenient.